Do this and watch your avoidant ex start missing you instantly. Hey, listen, I know the ache of wanting someone back, especially when they're the avoidant type, the ones who run the moment things get real, who pull away just when you thought you were getting closer. But here's the truth, they won't tell you. You don't need to chase them, plead, or wait around hoping they'll have an epiphany. You just need to do one powerful thing. Take your power back. You want your avoidant ex to miss you? Then stop showing up where they expect you to be. Emotionally, physically, digitally. Silence is not manipulation, it's clarity. It's giving them the gift of feeling your absence so they can finally recognize your presence. Avoidants fear closeness because it makes them feel like they're losing control. But ironically, when you detach and show that you're happy, confident, and complete on your own, you become magnetic. You stop being the pressure and start being the prize. Let your actions speak. Be seen out living well. Not for show, but because you are moving forward. That subtle shift in your energy, they feel it. And suddenly, the person who seems so indifferent is now wondering, did I lose something rare? Missing you doesn't come from seeing your texts pop up over and over again. It comes when your ex realizes you're no longer waiting on them to validate your worth. So here's the deal. If you want to flip the script on your avoidant ex, stop making them the center of your world. Make yourself the center. That's not just how you get them to miss you, it's how you stop needing them to. When dealing with an avoidant ex, the instinctive response is often to reach out, send that one last text, clarify what went wrong, or try to reconnect under the illusion of just checking in. But the very act of reaching out contradicts what an avoidant person actually responds to. Avoidants crave space. It's their emotional safety net. The more you pursue them, even with good intentions, the more they feel smothered, misunderstood, and ultimately pushed further away. It's a hard truth to swallow, especially when your heart is aching for connection. But if your goal is to make them miss you, silence is not just powerful, it's essential. Avoidants tend to value independence, often confusing vulnerability with weakness or loss of control. When they feel someone is emotionally dependent on them or trying to pull them closer, their instinct is to protect their autonomy by pulling back. This is not a reflection of your worth or what the relationship meant. It's a defense mechanism they've learned to use. That's why reaching out, no matter how subtly or gently, is usually interpreted by them as pressure, and pressure is the very thing they're wired to avoid. Instead, pulling back completely sends a very different message. It signals that you are not chasing, not clinging, and not emotionally needy. This creates a vacuum, and humans are psychologically wired to notice what's missing more than what's always present. Your silence disrupts the pattern they're used to, you being the one who always tries to reconnect. It forces them to confront the absence of your presence, and in that space, curiosity and reflection begin to take root. Why haven't I heard from them? Are they moving on? Did they stop caring? These questions begin to creep in when you are no longer available on demand. This approach isn't about playing games, it's about restoring balance. When you stop reaching out, you communicate self-respect and emotional maturity. You're saying, without saying a word, I know my value and I'm not going to convince someone to see it. That quiet self-assurance is far more attractive than any perfectly worded text or desperate attempt to reconnect. In fact, it's often the thing that turns the tide, not because you're trying to manipulate their feelings, but because you're finally allowing them to feel something real, the weight of losing someone who won't wait around forever. Detachment doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you care enough about yourself to stop clinging to someone who isn't meeting you where you are. Detaching with confidence is not about pretending to be over it or faking indifference. It's about shifting your emotional investment back to yourself. When your ex is avoidant, their discomfort with closeness often triggers anxiety in you, leading to a cycle where you pursue and they withdraw. Breaking that pattern starts with reclaiming control over your emotions and actions, not from anger, but from strength. Confidence in detachment is calm, not loud. It's the subtle change in energy that says, I'm not chasing you anymore. It's not cold or bitter. It's self-assured. You no longer need their attention to validate your worth, and that shift is deeply felt by the other person. Avoidant individuals are often hypersensitive to changes in energy, even if they don't show it. When you stop reacting to their silence, stop overanalyzing their behavior, and stop trying to decode their mixed signals, you disrupt the dynamic they're used to controlling. Many people confuse detachment with emotional numbness or shutting down, but true detachment is rooted in clarity. You recognize that no amount of effort will make someone stay who is not emotionally ready or willing. And instead of internalizing their distance as a reflection of your shortcomings, you recognize it as a signal to step back. This protects your self-esteem and helps you avoid falling into a pattern of overassumptioning in the relationship. The beauty of confident detachment is that it's attractive in a non-performative way. You're not doing it to get a reaction, but you often get one anyway. Why? Because people feel the difference between someone who's obsessing over them and someone who's at peace with letting go. You become unpredictable. You're no longer feeding the dynamic where they retreat and you pursue. That balance shift makes them question what changed and what they might be losing. The more grounded you are in your detachment, the more it challenges the narrative they've built around you. Maybe they thought you'd always wait, always reach out, always be available. But when you detach with quiet strength, it forces them to reevaluate. And that's when missing you becomes possible. Not when you're in their inbox or watching their stories, but when you've removed your energy and redirected it fully back to yourself. Focusing on self-growth after a breakup, especially with an avoidant ex, is not just a healing strategy, it's the most effective way to shift the emotional dynamic between you and them. Avoidant partners are often drawn to independence, not just in themselves, but in others. Ironically, the more you prioritize your own growth, the more you start to embody exactly what they were originally attracted to, someone with a full life, purpose, and direction. But unlike before, you're now living it for yourself, not for their approval or attention. When you start pouring energy into yourself, everything begins to change. Instead of waiting for a text, you're signing up for classes you've always wanted to take. Instead of scrolling through old photos, you're working out, improving your skills, reconnecting with your passions, and even discovering new ones. This isn't about becoming better to win them back. It's about remembering who you were before the anxiety of the relationship took over. It's about becoming someone who is emotionally self-sufficient and fulfilled, regardless of whether they come back or not. Avoidant individuals often detach from people who appear emotionally dependent or overly focused on the relationship to define their happiness. So when they see you building a vibrant life without them, it contradicts the narrative they may have told themselves, that you need them to be happy or that you were too emotionally consuming. Now they're seeing a version of you who is thriving, focused, and no longer orbiting around their availability. Personal growth isn't about grand gestures or dramatic changes. It's about small, consistent actions that build momentum. That might mean investing more time with your friends, learning to sit with discomfort instead of avoiding it, or finally tackling that goal you always put off. Each of these actions recenters you. You begin to stop waiting and start living, and your energy shifts from desperation to inspiration. As this transformation happens, it becomes palpable, even from a distance. You carry yourself differently. You're less reactive, you're harder to read, and more interesting to observe. And that's when the avoidant X starts paying attention. They may not admit it, but they notice your growth, your evolution, your independence. It makes them question their assumptions, and for the first time, they may start to feel the absence of someone who no longer needs their validation to shine. That's the true power of focusing on self-growth. It turns your pain into purpose and your presence into something unforgettable. Energy is everything when it comes to relationships, especially with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. When you're constantly trying to prove your worth, fix what went wrong, or analyze every interaction, your energy becomes heavy, anxious, and over-invested. That's not a judgment. It's a natural response to loss and uncertainty, but it's also the exact energy that pushes an avoidant X further away. Shifting your energy doesn't mean pretending to be okay or playing it cool. It means genuinely redirecting your focus and becoming grounded in your own worth, whether or not they come back. When you stop chasing, you stop feeding the dynamic that keeps them comfortable. They know what to expect. When you're always available, always initiating, always trying to fix things, there's no mystery, no tension, no distance for reflection. But when your energy shifts, when you stop reacting, stop trying to manage their emotions, and stop prioritizing them over yourself, that familiarity is disrupted. Suddenly, they no longer know where they stand with you, and that change forces them to think differently about you. Avoidance often feels safer in control. When you pull back and focus on your own center, you remove their sense of control without confrontation. You're no longer acting from a place of lack. You're living, choosing, and moving forward, not because you're pretending you don't care, but because you've stopped making them the focal point of your happiness. That shift is magnetic, not dramatic, not loud, just unmistakable. You don't have to shout your progress from the rooftops. You don't have to post curated images or try to trigger a response. True energy shift is subtle and internal. It's waking up with peace in your chest instead of anxiety. It's saying no to things that drain you. It's rediscovering your sense of joy without constantly wondering what they're thinking or doing. And when you start showing up for yourself with that kind of energy, it ripples outward in ways you can't fake. Your avoidant X may not say it, but they'll feel it. They'll sense that something's changed. You're no longer emotionally waiting on them. You're no longer making decisions based on whether they'll come back. That unpredictability creates space for curiosity. Instead of assuming they can return at any time to the same version of you, they start to question what's changed and what they might be losing if they stay away too long. There comes a moment after a breakup when you realize that waiting around for someone to choose you is the most painful way to keep yourself stuck. Reclaiming your power means deciding that your peace, your happiness, and your sense of worth are no longer up for negotiation. It's not about getting even or proving a point. It's about no longer giving someone else the authority to determine your emotional reality. When you take your power back, everything changes. Not just how you feel about them, but how they begin to feel about you. Often with avoidant X's, there's a lingering sense that they held all the cards. They pulled away and you reacted. They went silent and you filled the space. That imbalance can leave you feeling powerless, like you're always a few steps behind, trying to catch up to their emotional availability. But power doesn't come from controlling the outcome. It comes from realizing you have control over what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you give your energy to. You stop giving power away the moment you choose to focus inward instead of outward. You stop replaying the breakup, rereading messages, or decoding their behavior. You begin investing that energy back into yourself, setting new boundaries, learning new skills, and reconnecting with who you are outside of the relationship. That act of turning inward isn't selfish, it's self-preserving. It tells the world, and more importantly yourself, that you are no longer available for emotional breadcrumbs. And here's the thing, when you stop showing up the same way, the dynamic can't stay the same. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer waiting in the wings. That creates emotional distance. And in that distance, your absence begins to be felt. What used to be taken for granted now becomes missed. Not because you tried to force it, but because you removed the energy that was always chasing, fixing, and proving. When you reclaim your power, you start to move with intention. You're not acting from a place of fear or loss. You're grounded, clear, and self-respecting. That kind of energy doesn't beg, it attracts. You become the person they remember, not as someone who clung, but as someone who rose. And that version of you, the one who no longer waits to be chosen, is the version they're far more likely to look back on and truly miss. So here's the truth. Getting your avoidant ex to miss you isn't about strategy, it's about energy. It's about becoming so rooted in your own value that you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of it. When you stop reaching out, when you detach with confidence, when you focus on your own growth, shift your emotional energy, and fully reclaim your power, you stop chasing and start attracting. Not just attention, but respect. Not just curiosity, but genuine longing. And maybe they come back, maybe they don't. But the real win is this: you come back to yourself. You become the kind of person who doesn't wait to be chosen because you already chose yourself. Thank you so much for listening, for showing up today, and most of all, for being willing to take that hard but powerful step towards your own healing and wholeness. Your time, your heart, and your growth matter. And I'm proud of you for investing in all three. Take care of yourself, be kind to your journey, and never forget, your presence is a privilege. Let the people in your life rise to meet it. Thank you and goodbye.